Breaking news you can use, folks. You're going to want to hear this. There have been multiple reports of videos on the social media app called TikTok of non black Hispanics and Latinos complaining that black Americans refuse to stand with them. They cite that they were there during Black Lives Matter protests, despite only making up about 7% of those protests. They have been playing music such as Tupac, where he says that the black and Mexicans stand together. They have unfortunately been unable to find examples of their musical artists talking about standing in solidarity with black people. But they have a lot of examples of black people talking about standing with them. There have also been reports of black immigrants criticizing black Americans for refusing to stand with the Latino and Mexican community during these ICE protests. They have stated that they are under the belief that black Americans are lazy, which is very reminiscent of white supremacist talking point. They have stated that they are tired of us using our ancestors' accomplishments on immigration that allowed them to be here, and that we, in fact, have not done anything and have no right to take a rest, despite all of the genocidal actions that are happening against black Americans here. Despite black Americans opening their arms to all community at the detriment of themselves, black Americans apparently have not sacrificed enough blood, sweat, and tears to quench their thirst. There have also been plenty reports of very mixed black people, who I affectionately call quadrocoons, yelling into their cameras at different odd angles in different odd places, never at a protest, stating that black Americans are evil and wrong if they do not stand up with everybody else's cause, even while dealing with their racism, because they believe black people should push through their emotions and deal with the racism because there are other priorities taking place. Black people should come last. Folks, they're saying that after they come for the brown people, they'll be coming for the black people next. Many black Americans find this surprising. I am one of them because I never knew that they stopped, and I could have sworn that we were first, since this all looks quite familiar, but I could be mistaken. Apparently, a lot of these people suffer from some type of amnesia and forget that the Black Lives Matter movement was co opted by several other movements, including for Hispanics. There were quite a few reports of black people helping Hispanics protest for immigration rights, including the black vote, who overwhelmingly and the most voted for Kamala Harris. Just remember, folks, black issues are last. Deal with the racism, help others. That's the way to go. Hopefully, they'll double back and come help us afterwards. This has been News You Can Use with Crystal Black. Toodaloo.
It is crazy to me that I'm seeing black people telling white people they need to apologize for slavery. First of all, that white person have never owned a slave. Second off, you've never been a slave. So what you telling them to apologize for? You don't even know if your ancestors was a slave, and they don't even know if their ancestors was a slave owner. Like, I don't understand the entitlement that a lot of black people want to have. You have to apologize for slavery. Why don't you go to other black people whose ancestors were slave owners, who were black slave owners that was slaving their own people? How about you go to them and tell them, hey, you need to apologize for slavery? Because it wouldn't even happen if it wasn't for their own people enslaving them in the first place. How you going to tell a white person to apologize for slavery? They never owned a slave and you have never been one. So they don't need to apologize for nothing.
I absolutely love everything this woman had to say. So true, and the truth is something that a lot of Africans are not willing to accept yet. A lot of people in general don't like accepting the truth. But the truth of the matter is, right, and this victimization and taking on identity that does not belong to you is beyond me. And a lot of people like to say, oh, yeah, because of slavery, that's why we're this, we're that. It's easier to blame the white man than to take self accountability for your own life, for your own things that are going on in your life. I had a conversation with somebody recently, and they were like, oh, but what about all the things we've been through with slavery? And I asked them the same question. Who in your family was a slave? Who in your bloodline was a slave? Were your ancestors slaves? No. Other black people in different parts of the world may have been, but that's not the history of your family. And I always look at it. That's not the history of my family. That's nobody in my family has that history. And you're grabbing an identity that does not belong to you. But you know why? Because it sounds good when you complain about it to other people. That's the reality of it. It sounds good when you find other miserable people, because misery loves company, and you can sit there and blame everybody else and every other thing in the world for why you're not succeeding. Africa's issue is the African leaders. It's not the Western leaders, it's not the Western people, right? It's Africans themselves. And asking white people to apologize for slavery is crazy because, again, just as she emphasized, they didn't own slaves. Nobody in their family could have been a slave owner. And you're trying to ask somebody to apologize for something that they did not do. Like, both sides, you're trying to wear an identity that doesn't belong to you, and you're trying to put blame on somebody that does not belong to them either. It's a very silly way of going about life. And I'm glad to see more people online speaking about it from an understanding of what it takes to be success or your real identity, not buying into an identity that does not belong to you. And I think that's what a lot of people tend to do, because that's what the media, that's what mainstream, that's what the group dynamic says. But people have to start thinking for themselves. No one in my family was a slave. My history isn't of slavery. I may have a history of royalty in my family, and that's the identity and the destiny of my family. But you're trying to carry a destiny that does not belong to you. Why? Oh, because in the name of collective struggle, in the name of a thing, yes, it was terrible what happened, but that's nothing to do with you, right? So why wear an identity that does not belong to you? Why carry a burden that isn't your own? Those times are gone. We're living in new times, right? History is what it is. It's terrible, all of these things that have happened, yes, but it's not your family history or anybody else's for you to impose that upon other people. So I'm delighted to see this video, and share this because more people need to see this video. More people need to hear the truth, and we don't like hearing the truth. The issue with Africa the way it is because the African leaders are doing a terrible job and corrupting and robbing their own people. Africa does business with the West. This is what Africans don't want to accept. Africa does business with the West. Whether the West is paying a fair price or not, that's African negotiations that's accepting what's being given to them. That's your African leaders. There are contracts in place. The West don't just go in and start taking things anymore. They don't. There's contracts and agreements in place. There are contracts that are generational, that were signed a long, long time ago for hundreds of thousands of years for minerals to be exported out of Africa. The leaders accepted that. And Africa gets a lot of money from the West. The leaders just don't put it back into its people, into the infrastructure. They keep it for themselves. That's the reality. Africa's problem is African leaders. It's not the West. It's not the white man. Africa's problem is Africa.
So this is a really problematic statement, even though a lot of people would think it's quite neutral or even possibly positive. But the truth is this, then you are ignorant of the history. You are ignorant of, in Canada, the Indian Act. You're ignorant of the quotes of why it is John A. Macdonald's a piece of shit. So for me, it's like I know you're trying to be kind and you're trying to do the right things, and I don't see racism, but then you don't see our oppression, and you don't see the history of this country, and you also don't understand why it is, the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People would then include Indigenous governance. That's a foreign concept to a lot of Canadians because, of course, you haven't been taught it. So, I know we're on the same page. I know we're wanting the same goal, but I do need you and other Canadians to understand the history of why it is we're here. And yes, it's rising because of America, but it's always been here.
I always find it interesting when people find out that there's racists in their community and they act shocked, they act stunned. It's like, do you not know that these people are everywhere? This drunk is global. They got people who don't speak English hate on black people. People are hating on us in language we don't even understand. But you think they can't reach Marvel rival communities? Are you dead ass? They got people in Asia mocking black people's style and also being racist towards black people. But you think they can't reach your cosplay community? These are people who have never probably interacted with a black person in their entire life, and they hate us. You think of people in America, in the communities that you enjoy, aren't going to be racist in there? They got some people in Africa that hate black Americans. And you think they can't invade your gym community? There's just no way you think you gonna slip through the cracks and be like, oh, this community's safe. No, buddy. No, there's no safe place for black people out here on the internet. It's not here. And that's why black people out here have to make their own communities. Even those communities have racists in it. There are racist people who will support a black community But the second it's time to freaking say a slur or say something racist, they gonna be right there. You're like, oh, but I really love your content. Like these people are unhinged.
Nothing grinds my gears more than anti-black racism and intentional indigenous erasure. But the thing that gets me going even more is the flat-out denial that these things exist. Europeans act like racism is an American invention. It's not. Europe invented the concept of race to justify colonization and slavery. It's easy to say, racism exists, it's a global issue, but I personally am not racist. What's harder, what people avoid, is admitting that when black people, Arabs, Muslims, and Latinos speak up, the reflex is to call them dramatic or accuse us of playing the victim instead of sitting with the reality of what we've lived. I made a video yesterday about the rise of white nationalism and how it's shown up at this World Cup. A few examples. Argentine fans caught on camera being racist, slurs, chants, and still denying that they have a racism problem at all. French commentators calling their own star players not French the moment France was eliminated. This from a country who colonized half the world. UK commentators and spectators questioning whether Jude Bellingham is really English because his mother is Jamaican the moment England was out. Anti-black racism is pervasive. We don't move past it by avoiding it. We move past it by naming it directly. I can predict what happens every time I post. People won't engage with the substance, partly because of the literacy and comprehension crisis we're in, and I say that even though I break these ideas down as simply as I know how. But mostly because people want to be offended. They want to argue. Some genuinely don't want to hear it, especially from a black man with an American accent talking about race and identity. One comment I received on this post said, "We don't do that Hollywood-style racism over here in the UK. Focus on fixing your country. You're committing a genocide in Gaza." Let's unpack that. I'm consistently critical of US foreign policy, particularly US support for Israel, so the focus on your own country line doesn't land. And it's rich for a white British commentator to invoke Israel while ignoring that Britain, under the same settler colonial logic, carved out a colony built on racial hierarchy and apartheid. You don't get to outsource that critique when your country's responsible for the current state of Israel. Like I said, it's easy to say, racism definitely exists, guys, and we need to talk about it, but I'm not racist and neither is anyone around me. But far too often what we actually hear is, I haven't seen it or experienced racism, so it's not true. He's lying. And that usually comes from a white person. I went to uni in London, and the very first week, 2 of my lectures, there were guys with my last name who were Scottish. They asked me, how does an American share my last name? What they were really asking is, how does a black person have my last name? I jokingly said, because your great-great-granduncle owned my great-great-grandfather, and his cousin probably raped my great-great-grandmother, and voila, you got me. They immediately got defensive. No, mate, we don't do racism like you lot do over there in America. And to me, that was laughable because who do you think colonized and settled the Americas? Any black American, Jamaican, Trini, Dominican, Bayesian, Guyanese person with an English or Scottish or Irish last name is a product of colonization and exists because of your country's participation in the imperial era. I'm used to racial slurs, insults, and the vitriol that comes my way. That's the cost of being an educated black man who says things plainly. But this World Cup exposed something else, a level of delusion amongst white viewers that even I wasn't ready for. The world rallied against Argentina with video evidence of fans being openly racist. And in that same window, I received thousands of messages calling me a monkey-ass dirty nigga for pointing out racism in Argentina was on full display. That's the point, even though they're telling me that they're not racist. People want to detach from the world, post-colonialism, from what it means for black and brown people to walk through a world built by empire. Denying that based on your own limited experience or writing it off as an American thing is the clearest form of white delusion and deflection there is. And it's one that we don't have the luxury of indulging in. Race is made up, it's not real, but it was built deliberately to put whiteness at the top and blackness at the bottom. And across Europe, the Americas, and Africa, that construct still props up colonial white supremacist ideology today. You can have whatever feelings you want about how this makes you feel about your own countrymen. What you don't get to do is deny that racism exists. Stay black, stay blessed.
Mistreatment of black people is a global issue and has profound impact on the lives of millions of people around the world. Racism and discrimination are not limited to America, and it is imperative for individuals everywhere to work towards creating a world that is inclusive and just. By addressing the mistreatment of black people in America, white people, as myself, can play a role in creating a more equitable and just world for everyone. The mistreatment of black people in America is a critical issue that demands the attention and action of all individuals, regardless of race. By acknowledging the existence of systemic factors that contribute to the mistreatment of black people, recognizing the moral and civic responsibilities to address this issue, recognizing the impact that racism and discrimination have on society as a whole, and understanding the historical roots of this issue and acknowledging the global impact of this issue, white people can play a critical role in creating a more equitable and just society for all.
Racism, by definition, to me, and this is not just to me, it's a grammatical thing, right? If you have a word that ends with ISM and ism, it is almost by definition two things, an ideology and a system. So you think of other examples: communism, socialism, capitalism, fascism. These are ideologies. They're ways of viewing the world, seeing the world. They're also ways of organizing it, right, as a system. So at a systemic level, people of color can't really effectively exercise racism. Now, at the ideological level, I will be more than happy, for the sake of argument, to say that at the ideological level, anybody can be racist. Anybody can have a racist belief. But it's like, I can be a capitalist up here in North Korea, but I ain't getting very far with that, right? I can't actually effectuate my capitalist thinking into capitalism in practice. I can be a communist in a capitalist economy, but I'm not getting very far with that. It's sort of like, I guess the analogy I would use, if you have a stationary combustion engine and there's no fuel that's going to that engine to make it operate, it's still an engine, but it's not going to get you from point A to point B. Once you add the fuel to it is when it's operational, and so the fuel is equivalent to power. Right? So I can say, yeah, okay, there might be such a thing as black racism as a stationary combustion engine that just sits there and sort of hurts your feelings, right? But it's not going to do very much to you because it doesn't have the power to do so. And that makes it qualitatively different and quantitatively different. Both of them may be equally objectionable. It might be just as immoral for a person of color to believe I'm inferior as it is for me to believe they're inferior. But a person of color who believes I'm inferior is not going to be the bank officer, is not going to be the employer, is not going to be the cop. I'm sure there are black cops that get tired of white, spoiled college kids and high school students in privileged areas around the country, but they're not profiling them, and they're not pulling them over out of the car and beating them with clubs, and they're not shooting them by and large. So in that regard, even if you have bigotry, prejudice, or what we could call racism, if you're a person of color, you are very limited in what you're able to get away with that attitude, whereas white folks can take a pen and zone you out of existence, right? And bring in a bulldozer to knock down your house. You know, black folks in Baltimore can get mad at white cops and throw some Molotov cocktails through the CVS, and white Baltimore can come in and knock down entire black neighborhoods to make way for the interstate. Now, you tell me which one is more effective. It's pretty obvious, right? It's pretty obvious.
You cannot be a racist if you disagree with a religion, okay? A religion is not a race, okay? A race is not a religion, okay? A religion does not have a particular color to it. It is an ideology, and we are allowed to criticize ideologies. In the West, okay, in countries where we have freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and also this is why our nations have been able to grow so substantially, is because of our ability to listen to the general public, to put education and safety and healthcare first. You know, I could say I simply disagree with the Quran, and next thing you know, I'm being called a racist. Guys, it is not a race, okay? We need to start being able to differentiate the differences between religion and race. But this just shows us how easily it is for terminology, for specific words to be altered, okay, based upon the environments that we live in and the ages that we live in, okay. Words change and they adapt. It's almost as if the majority has made a whole new definition for what racism consists of. This is the definition of racism for those of you who do not understand, okay? So it says racism is the belief that people can be divided into distinct groups based on physical traits, okay, like skin color, and that some of these groups are inherently superior or inferior to others, okay? So one saying that they do not agree with Islam, or they do not agree with Hinduism or Buddhism or Satanism is not racism, okay? You wouldn't say to a Satanist that says, oh, I don't believe in Satan, you wouldn't call them a racist, would you? So what makes you think it's now okay to deem even black people, biracial people such as myself, as being racists? Guys, come on, it's unfair.
And gang, slavery was so bad, I don't even know how the fuck we still cool white people right now.
You know, I'm probably the least qualified person to talk about this shit, but most people might look at what he said and think, oh my god, why is he mad about something that happened 200 years ago, dude? Get over it. The truth is, it's not actually about 200 years ago. It's about what never healed. Most people might look at the video that he made and say, oh my god, slavery ended almost 2 centuries ago. Why are people still angry? Here's the truth, dog, okay? Trauma does not disappear just because the calendar moves. Trauma gets passed down in families the same way eye color and height does. A grandma teaches her son how to survive in a world that treated her like she was less than human. That son teaches his child. The fear, the resentment, the distrust, it becomes culture when society never truly fixed the root. This is the truth, okay? White families, broadly speaking, get to pass down land, wealth, property, business, safety. Black families, again, broadly speaking, pass down survival skills, trauma, how to avoid getting killed by the police talks, pain, distrust. That's not 200 years ago. That's yesterday for them. That's yesterday for them. You understand? Bro, to be honest, and I could be wrong about this, I feel like the anger is not really about white people. It's about the system. Most black people don't actually hate individual white people. What they resent is the system that benefited white people, disadvantaged black people, and never fully corrected the imbalance. Put it like this, right? It's like if someone robbed your family for 10 generations and then said, let's forget about it, it's in the past. Meanwhile, they're still living in the house that they stole. That's what it feels like. The other thing too, bro, is that America never apologized, healed, or repaired. The trauma wasn't just slavery. It was 100 years of legal segregation, banning black people from schools, jobs, neighborhoods, restaurants, public areas, banning interracial marriage, lynching, redlining, which for those of you that don't know, it pretty much means blocking wealth, mass incarceration, police brutality, and pretending it's a history issue instead of a current structure that manifested in different ways in modern times. White immigrants came to America and got loans, neighborhoods, business assistance. You know what black Americans got? Good luck.
Here is a list of racist comments and microaggressions I heard growing up as a biracial black girl that permanently altered my brain chemistry. The first time I was ever called the N-word with the hard R was in 7th grade by a kid named Jorge, and he was Mexican and the same shade as me. Also, in 7th grade, a boy asked the white boy sitting next to me if my hair was real because he refused to believe me if it came out of my mouth. And people to this day still think that my hair is fake. When I was in 5th grade, my gym teacher told us on the first day of school as an icebreaker to stand in the circle if you speak another language at home. So I do, as a biracial black girl, and so does another black kid. And what my gym teacher does is he questions the only 2 black kids in the circle, and he tells us to prove it. Mind you, the Asian kids that were standing in the circle didn't even speak their language fluently, and I spoke the same language as them because I'm half Asian. Growing up, all the Asian adults in my life always asked me who my parents were because they couldn't believe that my mom was Asian. Starting at the age of 4 or 5, I was called Blackie by all of the Asian people in my family because I was the darkest one. In 9th grade, my white friend said I smelled like a rice, even though most people said I actually didn't smell like anything. That same friend would also mimic my mom and grandma's accents. East Asians always side-eye me when I tell them I'm half Asian. There are still people who refuse to believe that my brothers are related to me because my brothers are full Asian and I'm only half Asian, so they think I'm lying or something. I don't know. Since I was always bullied for my skin tone, I always made my video game characters white or light-skinned, and I didn't know I did that until one of my friends pointed out that my movie Star Planet character was white. Even now, as a almost 21-year-old, I still don't know my skin tone, and I always need someone to help me shade match when I'm buying concealer or foundation, because I'm genuinely blind.
Black people know things white people don't. Before I go on, you can check my video notes for the references I used to create this video. Generations of white Americans were raised with a story that made us feel like heroes. We learned about abolitionists, not about the banks that provided insurance on enslaved people. We learned about the civil rights movement, but not about the white mobs who terrorized black families for trying to move into a better neighborhood. Systemic racism didn't just hurt black people, although they were the ones that took most of it, but it also misinformed white people, and that pisses me off. It trained us to see unfairness and injustice as progress. That's why when black folks talk about redlining, medical racism, or why certain laws hit their communities so much harder, many white people are just confused, or worse, and probably more commonly, they're defensive. It's not just ignorance, it's conditioning. The system made sure we didn't see the whole picture, because once we did, we might start asking too many questions. White people need to hear the truth from people who live it. But that takes a toll on black people. They've had to survive what we've only begun to learn about. And it's not fair to put that burden on them. That's why I study, listen, and talk to other white folks. It's not about guilt, and it's not about blame. It's about repair. Black people already know this history. White people need to know it too, because it's our history. It's our history too. Silence keeps the system working in the way that is unjust. Don't be afraid. You should be mad about what was kept from you on purpose. Now you have the opportunity to learn about it and start organizing your life differently. I am not an expert, but I love learning. You can put my username into your search engine. Scroll down if you want to help me out. You guys are the greatest. Get curious.
You don't have to travel with a black person to North Africa to know that they're racist as fuck. All you need is to understand the language, right? In which I do. I understand the language, right? I speak Arabic. And, you know, I'm not going to name the country, but listen, it's most of North Africa. Let's be real here. And I was at a bazaar, a store in a bazaar, and I see a biracial couple. You know, they're also buying stuff. I'm minding my own fucking business, right? They're all laughing, they're having fun, whatever. This guy's about to get a sale, right? And then I hear this motherfucker talking to his, like, coworker or his friend or whatever, the guy who's selling shit. He was like, oh, look at this beautiful white lady. Like, you know, it's unfortunate that she had to settle for this black guy. He's ugly. Look at his lips. They're so huge. That, word for word. I'm not exaggerating. It's word for word. And so I went to the couple, the biracial couple, and I was like, listen, this is exactly what he said. It's up to you if you want to go buy shit or not. I did my part. The guy obviously cursed the fucking seller out. He cursed them out. They were appalled. They walked away. And then the guy who's selling shit came up to me and he's like, yo, you just cost me my sale. Why would you do that? Like, you know we're not doing well out here. And I'm like, nah, motherfucker, you are doing well. Fuck out of here. And that should fucking teach you. And you're brown. You are brown. How could you be saying that when you're also brown? Try traveling to Europe or America and watch how quick they're going to treat you like that. Just watch. You're going to be humbled really fucking quick. I hope to God he don't do that shit again.
Acknowledging that your community is racist doesn't mean that you're racist. And I always struggled to understand why white people struggled with that concept. Until I was faced with a similar issue. People were calling out North Africans and Arabs as racist to black people. And as someone who has black Arabs and black North Africans in my family, even though I didn't express it, every time I'd hear someone say, North Africans are racist, North Africans hate black people, a thought would jump to my mind. Well, not all of us. My family isn't racist. I held this hidden feeling in me until one day I met one of my second cousins for the first time. He was the brother of another second cousin that I really liked, who would obviously never be racist. Now this boy was slightly older than me, but younger than his brother, right? And I thought he was alright, I thought he was funny, until he started talking to my cousin about how he says that N-word. I immediately turned my head and looked at him and was thinking, what? My cousin looked back to me with a confused expression. Why is he talking to me about this? But he was basically discussing why he should be able to say the N-word. Immediately I chimed in and I was like, no, you should not be able to say the N-word. You are not black. Immediately, well, I'm brown. It's not racist. My friends don't care. And then I asked him, are your friends even black? And he's like, well, no, I call my friends the N-word. But they're not black, so first of all, why would it matter? Second of all, just because you're brown doesn't mean you can say the N-word. But yeah, I tried to explain to him the deep meaning of the word. How much I tried to explain to him, he would simply not listen. And this is in a one-off situation. Most North African boys say the N-word, and I can't just simply distance myself from them, especially when many North African governments are being racist to black immigrants. And people say, well, I'm not responsible to them. Well, when it becomes so prevalent in community, you almost have to say, well, they are representation for the community. I remember when Aisha Speed was doing a tour in North Africa and received racial slurs, and people said, this isn't us, this isn't a representation. And I thought that for a bit. But when it becomes so prevalent in a community, you almost have to say, well, I guess it is. It is representation of the community. It's horrible, it's disgusting, but it is representation, and it needs to be changed. So now when someone says, Arabs are racist, North Africans are racist, I don't take it as a personal attack. They're not coming up to me and saying, you girl over there, you're racist. I think this goes for white people too. You can acknowledge systemic racism and prejudice, but it doesn't have to be specifically about you. It's not a specific targeted attack on you.
Now, one of my top suggestions for people before they come play in my comment section is to go play in traffic first, because that would be safer. Now, someone commented under my video while I'm standing at the board stating that we are where we are because of greed and racism. And their comment to that was, you as a black woman would say that, but not everything is about race. This is about greed. And to that I say, you're dumb. Okay? I just want you to know that. Everything in this country is based on race. And this is why I don't discuss my degrees with you all, because you don't read anyway. And you don't know your history in this country. Okay? The reason why you all don't have free healthcare right now is because they didn't want us to have it. So now you can't have it. You talking about cut off your nose to spite your face. They literally built bridges lower so that buses couldn't go to certain parts of the city. And who took buses? Do you see what I'm saying? You don't know what you're talking about. Y'all just be saying anything in the comment section. Don't worry, you've already been blocked. Oh yes, I block an ignorant motherfucker anytime. Okay, I don't have a problem with that. I need you all to open a book immediately. Okay? Yeah, you moved to the suburbs because your veteran granddaddy, great-granddaddy got to use their GI Bill. Mine did not, who fought in World War II. Okay? Do you understand what I'm saying? Everything in this... Let's just talk about the treasonous bitches that didn't get killed or jailed after the Civil War. They got reparations for losing their property. But you want to tell me that not everything is based on race. Honey, please. You are just as dumb as the day is long.
You guys couldn't care less about disabled people. You just like the opportunity to tell black people how they should feel. You just like the opportunity to diminish racism and the effects of it. That's it. Because if he was a brown or black man and had said something that was anti-Semitic or homophobic, you guys would have been able to say, even though he has Tourette's, he is also a functioning adult and he can therefore apologise for his tics. You could say, even though he may not be racist, the word itself is racist and therefore he should apologise. You guys are infantilizing him, and you're not infantilizing him because he's disabled or has Tourette's. You're infantilizing him because he's a white man.
Be honest. You
I don't like the black people.
Why not?
As wild and as tragic as it sounds, that is as simple as it is. This woman doesn't know why she hates black people, and she doesn't know why she hates herself. She's been taught by white supremacists to hate herself, and in doing so also hate black people. What she doesn't realize is that she hates her community. She hates her children. She will hate any child that is black, assimilating. Anybody who looks blacker than what she is, she's going to hate them. She has no idea why. This is why in the colored community, there's still segregation amongst colored people, because they've been taught a thing and they themselves haven't thought it through. They haven't questioned it. They have no idea why they have the type of self-hatred and hatred for other people, other than it has been taught by white people for you to hate yourself. Truth of the matter is that Auntie probably has more Bantu, Nguni, and Kwe blood than anything else, and she doesn't realize that she's been taught to hate herself. That's how simple it is. People don't realize what indoctrination really is. The math is as simple as kitchen slaves that have been taught to hate field slaves, and that auntie doesn't even know it. She hates herself, she hates her children, she hates her community, and she hates all her descendants. She doesn't know it, and she doesn't know why. That's Indoctrination 101 for you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a beautiful day.